That's good. Very good. Excellent, thank you. So, who's going to play the mridanga? What's the verse number? I need to see you. And maybe it's better I play the mridanga. I mean, he's a good mridanga player, but he's a bit slow. He'll slow things down. But don't give him the kartals either, because he'll slow it down with playing the kartals. Yeah. Can you get me that, Cole? The clay one is good. The other one, yeah, I've been playing that this week. Thank you. It's actually not a bad mridanga, this one, considering. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Baradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Baradhari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Baradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Raja Jana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Astro Tarasadashi Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vindaki Namacharya Sil Haridas Thakur ki Prem Se Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Se Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kundi Giri Gavarana ki Sri Vrindavan Dham ki Sri Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki Sri Purushottam Chitra ki Sri Ganga Mai ki Jai Sri Jamuna Mai ki Jai Bhakti Devi ki Jai Tulsi Devi Maharani ki Jai Harinam Sankirtana ki Jai Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishvaraya Krishna Vishvaraya Buddha Smari Buddha Jampa Buddha Chanamane Namo Vishvaraya Krishna Vishvaraya Buddha Smari Bhaktivedanta Swami Chanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharane Nivase Sasanyavadi Prasthachati Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 8, The Withdrawal of the Cosmic Creations, Chapter 19, The Lord Begs Charity from Bali Maharaj, text number 14. Is that right? Pita parada putraste tadvidvan dvijavatsalaha swamayur dvijalingebhyo devebhyo datsayachitaha Pita parada putraste Tadvidvan Dvijavatsalaha Swamayur Dvijalingebhyo Devebhyo datsayachitaha Pita pachada putraste Tadvidvan dvijavatsalaha Swamayu dvijalingebhyo Devebhyo datsayachitaha Pita parada putraste Tadvidvan dvijavatsalaha Swamayur dvijalingebhyo Devebhyo datsayachitaha Pita parada putraste Tadvidvan dvijavatsalaha Swamayu dvijalingebhyo Devebhyo datsavachitaha Pita parada putraste Tadvidvan dvijavatsalaha Swamnayur dvijalingebhyo Devebhyo datsayachitaha Pita parada putraste Tadvidvan dvijavatsalaha Swamayo dvijalingebhyo Devebhyo datsayachitaha. Ladies, Pita parada putraste Tadvidvan dvijavatsalaha Swamayo dvijalingebhyo Devebhyo datsayachitaha Pita parada putraste Tadvidvan dvijavatsalaha Swamayur dvijalingebhyo Devyo yatsat Pita, father, Parada Putraha, the son of Maharaj Prahlad, Te, your, Tatvidvan, although it was known to him, Dvijavatsalaha, still, because of his affinity for Brahmanas, Swam, his own, Ayu, duration of life, Dvijalingebhyaha, who were dressed like Brahmanas, Devebhyaha, unto the demigods, Adat, delivered, Saha, he, Yachitaha, being so requested. Your father Virochana, the son of Maharaj Prahlad, was very affectionate toward Brahmanas. Although he knew very well that it was the demigods who had come to him in the dress of Brahmanas, at their request he delivered to them the duration of his life. Purport: Maharaj Virochana, Bali's father, was pleased with the Brahmana community, was so pleased with the Brahmana community that even though he knew that those approaching him for charity were the demigods in the dress of Brahmanas, he nonetheless agreed to give it. Okay, so I think we'll move on. More or less storyline. Although the key feature is Virochana's affinity or affection for Brahminical culture. And we'll talk about that further. Text 15. Bhavana-charitan dharman ashtito grihamedi bihi brahmanai purvajai surair anyaischoda matkriti bihi. You also have observed the principles followed by great personalities who are householder brahmanas, by your forefathers and by great heroes who are extremely famous for their exalted activities. Right, so Bali Maharaj comes in a dynasty or in a line of charitable kings. And has seen the evidence of or the effects of giving to brahmanas. Tasmat tvato mahim ishad vineham varada shabhat padani twini dvaichendra samitani padamama. O King of the Daityas, from your majesty, who came from such a noble family and who are able to give charity munificently, I ask only 3 paces of land to the measurement of my steps. There it is. Purport. Lord Vamanadev wanted 3 paces of land according to the measurement of his footsteps. He did not want more than necessary. But although he pretended to be an ordinary human child, he actually wanted the land comprising the upper, middle and lower planetary systems. This was just to show the prowess of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I'll read the next verse. I think it fits. Nanyat te kamaye rajan vadanyaj jagadishvarat naina prapnoti vai vidvan yavadata pratigraha. O King, controller of the entire universe, although you are very munificent and are able to give me as much land as I want, I do not want anything from you that is unnecessary. If a learned Brahmana takes charity from others only according to his needs, he does not become entangled in sinful activities. Purport: a brahmana or sannyasi is qualified to ask charity from others. But if he takes more than necessary, he is punishable. No one can use more of the Supreme Lord's property than necessary. Lord Vamanadev indirectly indicated to Bali Maharaj that he was occupying more land than he needed. In the mature world, all distresses are due to extravagance. One acquires money extravagantly and also spends it extravagantly. Such activities are sinful. All property belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all living beings who are sons of the Supreme Lord have the right to use the Supreme Father's property. But one cannot take more than necessary. This principle should especially be followed by brahmanas and sannyasis who live at the cost of others. Thus, Vamanadeva was an ideal beggar, for he asked only 3 paces of land. Of course, there is a difference between his footsteps and those of an ordinary human being. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable prowess, can occupy the entire universe, including the upper, lower and middle planetary systems, by the unlimited measurement of his footsteps. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahayam Tadati Svapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. Lord Vamanadev is praising Bali Maharaj. He's acknowledging the prowess of his forefathers. Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Powerful, influential, famous demons. They're demons, but they're, albeit extremely powerful. So much so that really only Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu could be curbed by the presence of the Lord in the form of Lord Varaha and Lord Nrsingadev. So how powerful must Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu have been, because the only person who could curb their power was the Lord himself. And we can see how in the continuation of this pastime, or these pastimes, we can see what an influence their power had on the whole of the universe and their connection with the Lord. The Lord chose to appear as Lord Nrsingadev to protect his devotee Prahlad. And after destroying Hiranyakashipu, then Prahlad was given blessings by the Lord that he would be the king of the universe, the emperor, if you like, extremely influential and powerful, but that opulence or that material facility would not curb or impede his devotional service and his relationship with the Lord. Right? And why there's a warning here in these instructions by Lord Vamanadev about could you close that door, please? It's not actually meant for an exit and entry at this time of the day. That's why we have that cord there, right? Subtle, right? It's subtle, maybe a bit too subtle for many people, but that's what I said. Yeah, so Prahlad Maharaj was very concerned about his devotional service, his connection, his relationship with Lord Nrsingadev. He didn't want to damage or cloud or cover that connection. And so he's deeply concerned by being blessed with all of that material opulence that would have an impact on his mood, his consciousness, his mentality. And so that's why the Brahmanas and the sannyasis, and recommended here also, live a simple existence. What is it? Samo damas tapasocham chantir arjavam evacha. Simple existence, uncomplicated, uncluttered. And that's really what Vamanadev, Prabhupada's pointing out here, Vamanadeva is instructing Bali Maharaj by his request. I only need 3 paces. Bali Maharaj controls the whole universe. He's taken over the demigod's position. And partly because of within the family tradition of Hiranyakashipu, and more specifically Prahlad and Virochana. Prahlad's son is Virochana, and Virochana is the father of Bali Maharaj, right? And the relationship between the Brahmanas and these Kshatriyas has been one of mutual respect and mutual support. That's why Lord Vishnu told Aditi, we can't remove the demons from their position because they're favoured by the Brahmanas. Right? And so Lord Vishnu said, we can't do anything about the demons' power and position because of their piety. They have assumed the role of, rulers of the universe, and it's due to them, right? And of course, we also have to take into consideration the demigods had offended Brihaspati, and so they in offending their guru, that was one of the reasons why they lost their powerful position. So in effect, what's happening is the demons are fulfilling the desires of the Brahmanas, and the demigods fractured that relationship by being offensive to their guru. So there's that. I mentioned this. We've mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating because it's very important. And so we see in Prahlad Maharaj a concern about the influence of the material energy. Too much, and you see it, Prabhupada recommends simple living. Simple living, then high thinking, right? Too much engagement in materialistic activities or almost in any kind of activity. Right? What is it? Atyahara prayasascha. Too much endeavour can, too much effort and endeavour in life can make things so complicated that one doesn't have time for spiritual life. Right? This is really what happens for most people if we say, take some time out. Spend some time on yourself. Right? And even people say, oh, my life is so hard and difficult, I can't survive, I can't live. And we suggest, okay, take some time out for yourself. No, I'm too busy. Right? Very interesting. But it's actually within everybody's self-interest to take some time out and cultivate self-realization. Right? It's essential. You have to do that. You have to have some me time, if you like, and that's not selfish. It's actually required and necessary for personal development and balance in life, See, what's misunderstood in most of modern culture is that we are not, certainly there's the material aspect of life. We need to feed ourselves, we need to sleep, there's some effort has to go into looking after our material needs, right? But if that's all we do, we're no better than animals. What is it? Ahara nidra bhaya maitunum cha. Eating, sleeping, mating and defending. which is what the animals do. And if we humans, if that's all we do, then what are we? Dvipada pashu, two-legged animals. That's all. And so that's why Prahlad Maharaj and here Lord Vamanadev as a Brahmana, right, is setting the example and advising, live simply. Right? Not that he doesn't, that he renounces everything. No, I need 3 steps of land, right? But that's about as much as you need to sleep in, right? When you think about it. 3 steps is all we need. We just need a place to sleep. A roof over our heads. Some clothes to wear. Some food to eat. Good company. You know, some friendship. We need friends. Even devotees need friends. Bali Maharaj has got, you know, has taken too much, and you know, it's a source of great anxiety for the emperors and the kings. They're always worried about their kingdom. Source of anxiety. And of course, the elevated and qualified Kshatriyas, it's okay because they're qualified to oversee and to manage big, you know, operations. That's the nature and the characteristic of a Kshatriya. And there are people who have that capacity. Right? There are many wealthy people and there are many influential people who have that capacity, but they need the association of the Brahmanas, because it's the duty of the Brahmanas to remind people of their spiritual responsibilities, of their obligations to themselves and their obligations to others. And our obligations to ourselves is to understand our spiritual identity separate from the external, the external characteristics of their actions and activities. So the living entity exists on 3 levels. There's the external level, there's the subtle material level, the emotional, intellectual, mental, if you like. And then there's the spiritual level. And there's an intersection between those, a joining of them all in what we do and how we present and are perceived. And so the Kshatriyas have that responsibility and that power to administrate. But the danger of that is that one just becomes completely absorbed in material activities and forgets oneself. And that's what's going on pretty much in society today, and why we have so much mental ill health, because people are feeling the lack of their spiritual inclinations. They have the inclinations to understand themselves, but they don't know how. And that lacking creates such a antipathy in people. You know, we have suicide, we have psychiatric health problems, we have psychological health problems, so many social problems as a consequence. And actually it's very interesting, in this purport, what does Prabhupada say? He says, in the material world, all distresses are due to extravagance. Right? And, you know, from extravagance comes attachment. We like our comforts and we like the material facilities, but they're not essential for existence. And when they're taken away, we get upset. But if we're taught, you can be happy living simply, right? And it's not that we're against wealth or that we're against comfort. Sometimes devotees get the idea that, you know, we have to sleep on a wooden floor to be spiritual. Huh? That's not, you know, living austerely is not necessarily a measure of spiritual advancement. Huh? It may be an indication of spiritual advancement, but living simply doesn't mean self-abnegation. So Prabhupada didn't actually encourage that. And neither did, we discussed this the other day, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur did not encourage self-abnegation. But rather simple living means living comfortably, but using that comfort and that facility for propagating a proper awareness of oneself, a proper awareness of the practices that are beneficial for progressive advancement in spiritual understanding. So that means time needs to be spent on personal spiritual development. And that's what we call sadhana. Right? Rise early, worship the deity, worship the spiritual master, chant Hare Krishna. And so, we have half an hour of deity worship, 2 hours of japa, another half an hour of deity worship, then Bhagavatam, Bhagavat Sravan. So, and that's pretty much, that's in the Panchanga Bhakti process. Rupa Goswami gives us 64 items or practices in devotional service, but he says of those 64, the 5 prominent are the association of the devotees, Sankirtan, chanting Hare Krishna, Bhagavat Sravan, what we're doing now. So, worship, japa, and study of these principles, of the philosophical and a practical application of devotional service. And then worship the Murti Seva, worship the deities, and Mathura Vas, live in a sacred place, live in Mathura, effectively, that's what Mathura Vas means. But the principle of Mathura Vas is live in a place where spiritual practice is prominent. Right? Why Prabhupada said, this is not Melbourne, this is Vrindavan. Right? So you can live anywhere, and so long as association of the devotees is there, there's Sankirtan, chanting Hare Krishna, there's worship of the deity, there's study of the scripture, then that becomes a sacred place. You're living in a sacred place. So that's what, a lot of that is what's lacking in a society where the major concern is material comforts. Right? Material acquisitions in order to get rid of anxiety. But what does it do? What does it do? It does the opposite. It just creates more material anxiety. So, Vamanadeva is saying to Bali Maharaj, you've got too much. By his example, Prabhupada says here, of requesting only 3 steps of land. This is all you really need to survive. And so Prabhupada's making a point here that brahmanas and sannyasis who are living at the expense of others should ensure that their lifestyle is simple, not overly complicated, not over-collecting and over-eating or over-endeavouring for material things that are difficult to obtain, not becoming greedy for material things. And this is what Rupa Goswami says. These things are dangerous for the ongoing prosecution of one's spiritual life. Right? Achahara prayasascha prajopa. Prajopa means too much material talk. Right? Why Prabhupada says don't read newspapers. Right? Don't go to the cinema. Right? Prabhupada says in the Upadeshamrita, devotees don't go to the cinema. Right? You don't need to go to the cinema these days. You can just go on YouTube. So, not too much YouTube either, for that matter. Right? Because it saps, associating with a material focus on life and associating with people who have a material focus, a material understanding of things, contaminates or clouds the proper and introspective perspective on life. So Vamanadeva is concerned for Bali Maharaj. As mentioned previously, why was Lord Vishnu in anxiety when he was hiding from Hiranyakashipu? Wasn't because he was fearful of him. But he was concerned about what can I do to benefit him. And this is the quality of a devotee, right? A devotee is concerned about the welfare of others. And so Vamanadeva is concerned about Bali Maharaja's welfare. And so he's instructing him. Well, as we know, this is a multi-layered experience. Because Vamanadeva, even though he's asking for 3 steps, and he's a dwarf, right? So dwarf steps are smaller than the average person. Right? But at the same time, even though he presents as a dwarf, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so actually, his 3 steps, well, he only needs to take 2 steps and he's taken up the whole universe. Brilliant, really. And so, he's saying, your father, Virochana, was a munificent and magnanimous person. And he was saying, and that's why you're a munificent and magnanimous person, right? So, Lord Vamanadeva is actually puffing Bali Maharaj up a bit. Right? Prabhupada says, if you want to influence people, then glorify them. Right? My father used to say to me, flattery will get you everywhere. Right? Yeah. And so that's really what Vamanadeva is doing to Bali Maharaj, telling him, you're coming in a line of illustrious forefathers, of illustrious Kshatriyas, who are famous for their generosity. And the story of Virochana is quite interesting. It's only briefly mentioned here. But the demigods asked him for his life, right? And he gave it. And we see that also in the story of Vritrasura and how, I've forgotten what his name is. Is it Angada? No. One of the rishis, the demigods went to the rishi and they said, Dadichi, right? And the demigods had been told by their guru that the only way they could kill Vritrasura if they had a sword made from the bones of Dadichi. Some pretty far out stories in the Bhagavatam, yeah, when you think about it, right? So they went to Dadichi and they said, we want your body. We need your bones to make a sword so that we can kill the demon Vritrasura. And he gave his body. Can you imagine that? You know, we talk, you know, in modern society we talk about the greatest sacrifice is going and fighting for your country and giving your life, right? And nobody really does that willingly, right? You go and fight, but there's always the hope that you won't get killed, right? It's an occupational hazard that you may get killed fighting, but nobody expect, or it's a kind of a what do you call it? It's a conflicting situation, right? You're fighting for your country, for honour, for the free life of the citizens, but there's every risk, every possibility that you'll get killed. And so are glorified as a result. But there's always a possibility that you'll survive and be a hero. You know, you come home with the medals. Right? But it's interesting, isn't it? The soldiers in the most recent conflicts in Australia come back with the most complicated. Even from World War I and World War II, there was a thing called shell shock, right? Because there's so much trauma on the battlefield that the soldiers come back and they're emotionally destroyed. And because of that trauma, then what's the problem? What's the problem with the major problem at the moment with returned soldiers? Anybody know? What's that? Yeah, and as a consequence, what do? Yes, suicide. Big problem, right? So the demigods approached Dadichi, and that was it. Right? But Dadichi had such a deep understanding of his identity that he knew, you may take this body, but I'll get another one. And as a result of that sacrifice, be very elevated. Right? That was the principle of sati. The wife, the widow, would enter into the fire of the husband knowing that I'll be elevated to a higher position. I have an exalted husband. If I follow my husband, I'll go to the same place that he does. Right? So incredibly detached. Of course, it was abused. People don't have that kind of realization in this day and age. And that deep introspection. So Vamanadev is instructing here on many levels and glorifying the charity of Virochana, who, like Dadichi, gave up his body for the benefit of the Brahmanas. And even though he knew that they weren't Brahmanas, that it was the demigods cheating him. Huh? Not a lot of detail on that, but that's the basic principle of Virochana. But Vamanadev is glorified the wonderful qualities and characteristics and the generosity of his forebears. In other words, encouraging him. And saying, as Prabhupada is pointing out here, Bali Maharaj, you've got too much. You've got too much. You don't need all of this wealth. And because and keep in mind that the Lord's purpose is to get the kingdom of the demigods back so that the demigods can retain their rightful position. Right? And so, ostensibly, the plea is, just give me 3 paces of land. And Vamanadev, setting the example for brahmanas. Don't accumulate extravagantly. Extravagance leads to distress. Right? Too much opulence, too much wealth. And you know, it shouldn't be show bottle renunciation. That we live simply but accumulate a lot of wealth. The idea of accumulating wealth for the brahmanas and for the sannyasis is to use it in Krishna's service. If it's used in Krishna's service, then that's real renunciation. But the danger is, because of the influence of material energy, that one becomes attached to the facility and to the, you know, not only the material facility, but also to the fame, the recognition that comes from being wealthy, influential, and powerful. That also has to be given up. Otherwise, that becomes a detriment or an obstacle to one's spiritual advancement. So Bali Maharaj is being glorified, he's being flattered ultimately by Vamanadev. And even though Lord Vamanadev is teaching the principle, he's actually going to take the lot. But only with 2 steps. Only with 2 steps. And of course then he's going to say to Bali Maharaj, okay, you promised me 3 steps, I've taken 2, what else are you going to give me? Huh? So, thereby demonstrating the prowess and the potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whether he appears as a baby, whether he appears as a hog, right? Whether he appears, as a fish or a swan, right? Or more extraordinarily, he appears as a half man, half lion. That really demonstrates his potency. Or as a baby, we see, you know, in the pastime of Putana, Krishna appears like a little baby, innocent, you know, as a baby in a cot, but still is immensely powerful. Even if he appears as a dwarf, still the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not to be judged or measured by external features. And why one has to be in the association of the devotees is to understand these subtle principles that Vamanadeva is teaching Bali Maharaj and teaching us also, as Prabhupada is pointing out here, by his example. Otherwise, too much accumulation of material wealth will be the cause of distress. If we need anything, we should only take a little. Ask for a little, take a little. That's called madhukari, right? Like a bee. The bee goes from flower to flower and just takes a little bit of pollen out of each flower. And in that way accumulates the wealth of the honey, right? But just takes a little bit from each. Of course, from time to time, generous people will come along and give according to their inspiration and according to their capacity. But still, it should be used for Krishna's service. Yeah, that's a tricky one. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions on any of these points? Mahatma Ji. I don't know whether who's got the other microphone? Is it there? Have a look in the cupboard. Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for a wonderful class, Aniruddha Prabhu. I've got one comment.
Comment?
Yeah. Okay. Last Wednesday, 18th of December, yeah, I was with a temple president of another temple, and he told me that he wakes up quite early every day, attends Mangal Aarti, Tulsi Puja, then he does at least 2 hours of chanting. He doesn't complete his rounds. Then after 8 rounds, he reads at least 2 to 4 hours Prabhupada books. Then greeting the deities, and only after finishing his 16 rounds, he does the breakfast, takes the breakfast, honors the breakfast. So, what do you think of his routine? Please give your comments. Thank you.
What do I think? Wonderful. I can't do that, but if he can, good.
2 to 4 hours, he must read.
Yeah, he's not going to do that before breakfast.
Yeah.
And chant 16 rounds, and attend all of the morning program. Realistically, that means you get up at midnight, huh? That's not going to happen. Look, it's very interesting. Especially I notice now that I'm older, I can't chant my rounds as quickly as I used to. Right? And this week, well, last few weeks, since I got back from India, I've been able to attend the morning program a lot more. Which is interesting. My endocrinologist changed my medication. And it looks like I'll be able to stop taking insulin, which is pretty interesting. And still my sugar levels, he added one, actually told me, he said, I'm surprised that you're taking insulin and you haven't been taking this other medication. So he put me on the other one. And then I found that when I was in India, I was having hypos. I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd be starving hungry and wobbly, because my sugar level would be like 3.8 or, really low. So
time difference.
But it depends on the individual. You know, what one person, and even at different stages of your life, you'll be capable of doing have a different regime. That's my experience. And of course, Prabhupada encouraged us to rise early and not sleep too much, but at the same time, if you don't sleep enough, what happens? You go gaga.
Yes, right.
Right? You like that, Sibya? You like being gaga, right? No, nobody likes being gaga. You can't even think straight. Right? So, I think, you know, the principle is, yes, chant Hare Krishna. The principle is go to the program as much as possible. Right? Read, you know, because we need our realization or our enthusiasm in Krishna consciousness is dependent on a proper philosophical understanding and perspective of things. That's why reading is so important. So, you know, getting all of that done before you have breakfast, for me, is impossible. And in fact, you know, because of aging, what I've noticed now, especially if I keep my sugars down, I need to have breakfast now 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, before 9 o'clock. And then I'll have a snack, small meals, but more often throughout the day. Whereas I was, you know, when I was a young devotee, I would only sometimes eat 1 meal a day, right? And I could do it at 25 or 30 or even 35. But at 65 or 69 or 70, cannot possibly, I need to, a little bit here, a little bit there, like madhu curry, right, a little bit, dunk, dunk, dunk. So then the sugar levels are maintained, not, you know, fasting and then it drops, and then you eat a big meal, goes up, and the body's like, what are you doing? How am I supposed to manage that? You stress your system. That's why smaller meals regularly throughout the day is actually better for your health, right? Because then the pancreas can manage the insulin production, which is balancing the sugars. But if you do fasting, then a huge big meal, it just blows the system out of proportion, right? And that's, you know, there's no diabetes in my family, right? There's none. There's no family history of it, but I think, you know, because of somewhat of an extreme regimen, I kind of messed up the system a bit. And also, just from working too hard. Okay, it's devotional service, but I just too much stress. So, balance, and that's why Krishna says, yukta hara viharasya, yukta swapna yukta kama sachetusu, yukta swapna vibodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. We can mitigate most of the problems of our lives by having a regular practice. So, the principle of your friend is he has a regular program, right? That regular program may be different for you, for me, for Mahalakshmi, for...
Yeah, he's a young fellow, 30 years
Yeah,
old.
that's right.
30 years.
Yeah. So, be regulated? Yes. Chant Hare Krishna? Yes.
And reading Prabhupada's books?
Read Prabhupada's books? Yes. All before breakfast? Maybe not.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sibya's got a hand up. We know if we don't have questions from anybody, the pecking order is Mahatma, then Sibya. So slowly, Sibya, loudly and slowly, okay?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the nice class. Prabhu, you mentioned how we devotees should be satisfied with simple things and should not run for material comforts or like extravagance, because that can sometimes be a problem in our bhakti. So I'd like to ask, is it wrong to pursue a higher education or like a higher career in Krishna consciousness? Because we know as we go higher, we'll obviously get more opulence, and that could be a hindrance to our bhakti. So.
Yeah. Be a doctor, or be a high achiever. Again, it depends on your capacity, right? Like Dhruva did exceptionally well in his VCE results, right? So he wants to do medicine, and that's a lot of hard work. To get to that point, and then to do medicine is years of work, right? So my observation is he has a capacity to do it, right? And he's self-motivated. He's supported by his family, but he's got the capacity and has the enthusiasm, which is demonstrated in what he can do, right? Unfortunately, when we're young, that's not always immediately observable, what we're good at. And our parents are always telling us, come on. Have you noticed that? Yeah. And they should do that, right? But at the same time, like my mother said to me, whatever you can do that. Don't overachieve. Of course, I was lazy also. That's why they were always pushing me, right? And there's a balance, right? There's a balance. Our parents will always be pushing us to do better, because very often they can see that we have the potential that can be achieved, that's achievable, right? But we're thinking, no, I don't like this. Huh? But at the same time, so we need to be practical. And that's a bit of a balancing act, not easy. So there's the effort and the time that we should put into our vana or occupation, right? And there's also the effort that we should be putting into, or we should understand our situation in terms of ashrama. And we balance all of that with our spiritual practice, right? So for those who have the propensity and the capacity for notionally higher material achievement, can do that because they also have that, and with the spiritual understanding and perspective that ultimately I should be doing these things for Krishna, right? And live simply as a result of that, not become totally enamoured by the material. So it needs, we need to do these things with care and with good advice, with help or support from the devotees. Hari Priya, Hari Bol, Hari Das. Did you just get up, huh? Vaishnavi, how are you? Good. Good to see you. Haribol. Yeah, so we don't discourage people from achieving their potential. But of course, the warning is, don't let material pursuits hamper or hinder your spiritual progress. Right? So we have to be careful. And that'll be different for each individual. So what's good for you may not be good for Gokul. Right? And what's good for Gokul may not be good for Sarabi. Right? So each one, we have to deal with each person individually and tailor things for the individual. How does that sound?
Thank you.
Yeah. Sibya, tell me, what are you good at?
Singing.
Singing?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'd have to ask others whether that's true or not, I suppose. Yeah. You're hardly going to make a career out of singing. What else are you good at? Practically.
Debating. Debating.
Okay, so you're arts, maybe, as opposed to science and math. Let's see. Anyway, how old are you now?
13.
13. Yep. Your true, propensity, your skills and talents will manifest in the next 3 or 4, 5, 6 years. What are you good at school?
Maths.
Math. Okay, what do you? All right. Huh? Millionaire. What's it? What did you say?
Intelligent.
What?
Intelligent.
Intelligent. Maybe I wasn't very good at math, but that doesn't mean I'm not intelligent. Huh? I don't like math. I hate it actually, but I have a logical brain. Anyway, let's see. Right? Let's see. So I think, in our student, especially in your, read the texts, do the assignments, attend the class, and pay attention, right? If you can do that, your natural qualities and your natural propensities will be demonstrated in your achievements. And if you're not an A+ student, don't worry about it too much. Anybody else? Comments? Okay. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai.